The next talk is by Dr. Kanti Bansal. She will be speaking on recent evidence on oral ovulogence. We will be having a 10-minute discussion after the third talk, and I would request all the speakers to keep to the time.
Good morning. Thanks to Dr. Dhurusha and Dr. Madhuri Patil. I will be speaking today on recent evidence of oral ovulogence. As we all know, we have the selective estrogen receptor modulators like clomiphene citrate and tamoxifen, and we have aromatase inhibitors, letrozole and anastrozole as oral ovulogens. I'll be concentrating more on clomiphene citrate and letrozole because these are the two most commonly used molecules. And regarding the adjuvants, we have a lot of them, including HCG, dexamethasone, insulin sensitizers, aspirin and cabergoline. I would again I'll just touch upon each of them, but more concentrate on metformin, which is a very controversial molecule, and also we all are using it, and a few others. Now coming to clomiphene, when do we start it? We can start it either on day 3, 4 or 5, and literature says it doesn't make a difference, and the dose should be 50 milligrams to start, and you could rise it by 50 milligrams if there's no ovulation. And we can also give clomiphene citrate even if the patient has not got withdrawal bleeding, according to some of the papers. And then when do we stop it? After if 6 ovulatory cycles they fail to yield pregnancy, and if there's no ovulation with 150 milligrams per day, and if the endometrial thickness is less. Now the results of therapy with clomiphene are very, very exciting, because there is an ovulation rate up to 80%, and both pregnancy rate and live birth are up to about 20 to 35% per patient, and per cycle it is around 20%. And miscarriage rate, of course, is a little bit high on the higher level, 15%. And being so commonly used, we are very lucky that this clomiphene citrate has not got the problem of ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome as compared to other molecules. Now there's a very interesting study in the Cochrane library, and in this what they have done is they have compared giving clomiphene for 5 days and giving clomiphene for 10 days, and what they have found out is that there's actually the 10-day regime improves the pregnancy rates in PCOS, but the only problem with this study is that the quality of this study is low because of the number of the subjects was low. This is a very interesting study which I thought of putting it over, and it's in the Fertility Study 2009, and here what they did was, in the luteal phase of the cycle, they started clomiphene citrate after finishing 5 doses of medroxyprogesterone in the luteal phase, even before the patient got the menses. That means they completed the medroxyprogesterone, and just after completing the medroxyprogesterone, they started with clomiphene citrate in cases of PCOS. And then what they found out was that there is a better lead of follicles in this, and also the problem of the endometrial thickness was not there, and because of this there was a higher incidence of pregnancy. That means the pregnancy rates increased. Now we all know about clomiphene resistance, that is anovulation even with 6 months of therapy, and this happens in about 10 to 30% of cases, and the most common causes are obesity, hyperandrogenism, and also insulin resistance. And what are the treatment options for this? The clomiphene could be given in an extended dose up to 10 days. So in this case, as I already told you earlier, there's a 50% increased ovulation. Then adjuvants can be added like dexamethasone, metformin in cases of obese ladies, and OCP pre-treatment also could help. And if all these fails, just for the completion of clomiphene resistance, you can add on gonadotropins, and also for some of the patients we can go in for laparoscopic ovarian drilling. Now failure is that pregnancy is not achieved even though there are 6 cycles of ovulation. And what are the causes of failure? It could be because of the peripheral anti-estrogenic effects both on the cervical mucus and endometrial growth. There could be problem of elevated LH, and there could be an adverse effect on the oocytes. And what's the treatment for failure? Maybe combining with IUI or use of other ovulogens, or what we could do is combining clomiphene citrate along with gonadotropins. Now, this is the molecule that has surpassed clomiphene in many ways, and now we think that it's better than clomiphene. It gives better endometrium, better pregnancy rates, as effective. Sometimes we do compare in cases of PCOS, it could be as effective as gonadotropin, but at the same time less expensive and lower requirement of gonadotropin when we use letrozole as compared to clomiphene citrate. Now once again, the Cochrane library, we need whenever we think of evidence, we base a lot on Cochrane library, and here also they have shown that the live birth rates and pregnancy rates have been improved, and there's no difference between the effectiveness of letrozole and laparoscopic ovarian drilling. And of course, even in letrozole, as I told you all, in clomiphene citrate, the rate of OHSS is nearly negligible. Now, there are various regimes of letrozole. We have a standard dose of 2.5 milligrams which we give for 5 days. We could also give a single dose of 20 milligram on day 3, and we have other protocols which are extended protocols wherein we give from day 3 to day 12. I'll just give you all a schematic representation of all that. And when we have extended letrozole therapy in CC resistant women, there's a good ovulation rate, maybe about 66%, higher pregnancy rate of about 17%, and so definitely there is a benefit of giving letrozole in CC resistance. This is the extended protocol. It's very simple. Go give for 10 days. Then this, I like particularly this protocol. I have used a lot of this protocol, and it's easy to remember for the patients as well. Start with 1 tablet, 2 tablets, 3 tablets, and 4 tablets. Then here we have 3 different papers. They all studied compared letrozole and clomiphene, and what they found was letrozole could be an alternative for CC and PCOS, and some of the papers also said that it is superior to clomiphene citrate. Now we have different, whenever we talk of evidence, we need not only take all the RCTs or the Cochrane database, but also we need to see what the these august societies say. And the latest is by the American College of Obstetrician and Gynecologists, and they said that letrozole should be considered as the first line of therapy in ovulation induction, especially in patients of PCOS where the body mass index is more than 30, and so it is better for these patients. And most of the other societies also say, but some of the societies say that clomiphene and letrozole are equal. But then the Androgen Access and PCOS Society, which is jointly with us in 2015, they said that we can begin with both clomiphene and letrozole. So just let's move on. So according to the latest, letrozole first line therapy for ovulation induction. Let's see what some other papers. So again, we have a lot of meta-analysis from many of them, and this 2017 is the latest which I got. And according to these, there's no difference in the congenital anomalies. That's the reason that it was banned for few years, if you all remember. But now the latest review has come, and so once again, because of even this reason, less number of congenital anomalies, it is superior. I have got so many, evidences for letrozole and clomiphene citrate, and this is here the number of subjects are 750. What we can see is with letrozole the ovulation is 61%, whereas clomiphene is 48%. The twins rate is 3.2, but in clomiphene, of course, we all know letrozole gives a monofollicular development, and that's why the multiple pregnancy rate is not there. But in clomiphene, it is at 7.4%, and the live births are about 27.5% with letrozole. So, friends, whenever we have PCOS and BMI more than 30, letrozole should be the first line of treatment for ovulation induction, as it increases the live birth rate compared with clomiphene citrate. This is a very recent 2016 by the American College. So all these are various this I have given because it's a double-blind randomized controlled trial. Once again the same thing, and here this was very important when we restarted letrozole, when they were saying that the letrozole causes a lot of congenital anomalies, but then on the contrary, in this evidence we have cardiac malformations are less with letrozole. Now we come to adjuvants. So this I have already told you. Now what about human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG? We use it routinely as a LS surrogate in our patients, and the dose is around 5,000 to 10,000 IU. And where is it indicated? Most probably we indicate it for triggering the ovulation, for the timing of the ovulation, and sometimes it's a delay response or even absent LS surge, and so the well developed follicle is there, but it's not going to rupture, and in these circumstances we do give HCG injection. And according to the Cochrane database, there are these studies wherein they have compared clomiphene alone and with clomiphene with HCG, and very surprisingly, I was surprised reading this, they found that addition of HCG does not improve pregnancy outcome and luteal function. We have to believe these evidence. We can't think that a few hundred cases we do and say that, oh no, HCG is really important, we have to give. No, but this is what evidence is. Now coming to dexamethasone, it is indicated whenever DHEAS levels greater than 391, and it may reduce the anti-estrogenic effect of clomiphene citrate on the endometrium. But we have to be very, very careful. We cannot give more than 0.5 milligrams, and it should not be given for a very long time, because there is always the risk of adrenal suppression and severe side effects that can resemble Cushing syndrome. What are the regimes of dexamethasone? Long continuous, long alternate days, and short. What we generally give for our patients of PCOS when we think of ovulation induction is the short protocols, wherein we give either 0.5 milligram per day from day 5 to 9 or 2 milligram per day from day 3 to 12. Generally we give the day 3 to 12. Now benefits, it definitely improves the response and also useful in CC resistant cases. And actually we are sometimes apprehensive. If we abruptly stop this, will there be any problem? It doesn't, there's no problem when you have given for such a short duration. And the only undesirable side effect mainly with the dexamethasone is the weight gain. Yeah, now let's see what the Cochrane database says. So, according to this Cochrane library, it has been advocated in order to improve the chances of ovulation and subsequent pregnancy. That means there's a positive feedback with the, for adding of dexamethasone. Now coming to insulin sensitizers, we have a lot of them. Mostly we give metformin in a very few patients where absolutely metformin is not tolerated. A small dose of pioglitazone can be given, but right now I'll be only concentrating on metformin, D-chiroinositol and myoinositol. So this is a rise and fall of metformin, and according to the Cochrane database, there are a lot of studies which really say that metformin could be given, but then the 2012 Cochrane reviews indicated that it was not effective in inducing ovulation. Here we have to understand that if you just give metformin thinking that metformin will give rise to ovulation, that's wrong. It has to be combined with clomiphene citrate, and I think this is the gist of all these studies that have been initially made. And one very important consensus that was arrived in Thessaloniki ASRM ISHRE guidelines in 2008 is that they have observed that metformin really helps in reducing the ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome and also reduces the missed abortion rates. So once again, here you see I have purposely put this because this is the latest evidence. This is the from the American Society Reproductive Medicine 2017, and you can see here how many things they have gone through and did a lot of testing, and they have come to a consensus that metformin is not indicated as the primary ovulation induction. What is this? I think you're not doing justice for me. Metformin not indicated as a primary ovulation drug, and combining with CC is better. And also we have to remember that metformin reduces the incidence of OHSS in PCOS. Now coming to myoinositol, who is not giving myoinositol? I think everybody in this hall, but then people are shy to tell that this thing. I'll show you all that there are a lot of evidences to say that we could be giving myoinositol, and the correct dosage is 4 grams, and at least 14 weeks we should be giving. And they have done a lot of studies, and let's see. So according to all this, myoinositol is very effective and well tolerated, and it also decreases the insulin resistance, and sometimes it also helps in weight loss, and combination with clomiphene, additionally it increases the ovulation rates. Once again, this is about chiroinositol, increases the pregnancy rate. Now N-acetylcysteine, they had 2 groups. Group 1 they gave 1.2 gram per day with CC. The other group just had 100 milligrams. But what they found that when they combined NAC with clomiphene, there were definitely good pregnancy rates. Again,
I think we are already 4 minutes over now.
Yeah.
Because we have to have discussion.
just 2 more slides. Yeah, NAC is good. And yeah, one more thing. This is a ketoconazole also is a good this thing, and they have found that it has added anti-androgenic effects. Bromocriptine also. Pre-treatment with oral contraceptive pills is good. And to conclude, letrozole is superior, improved clinical pregnancy rates with metformin. Myoinositol is good. Again, chiroinositol and N-acetylcysteine improves clinical pregnancy rates. So, thank you so much, and I hope you all enjoyed the evidence.
We thank all the speakers for making wonderful presentations. We had 3 different topics here. Initially, Dr. Madhuri spoke about various review articles where we know about the inflammations and how one can think of developing some markers based on these cytokines or chemokines. Then we had Dr. Sonia Malik, who spoke about managing insulin resistance in infertility and how there is a need to include this in the guidelines. And the last speaker, Dr. Kanti Bansal, spoke about the treatment where she mentioned about clomiphene citrate and letrozole, and especially in PCOS patients, how letrozole is better as compared to clomiphene citrate, and we once again thank all of them, and we keep these papers open for discussion. Thank you.
So I have a question. Um, Dr. Kanti, you said you will use letrozole, recommend letrozole in PCOS patients whose BMI is more than 30. So what stops you from using it in women who have BMI less than 30?
Yeah, you can use even in patients where the BMI is less than 30. It's not that it's only for them, but if you use for patients where the BMI is more than 30, it could be more, because these are the patients who are more difficult to treat, and there you could initially start trying with letrozole.
And if letrozole is definitely better than CC in
No, I
all
would like to make a comment that the most recent evidence says that letrozole should be the first line of drug as an oral ovulation in women with PCOS. The most recent data published in 2018 says that now letrozole is much better, and there was a trial which was published in BMJ which compared clomiphene citrate with clomiphene citrate plus metformin, letrozole, gonadotrophins, laparoscopic ovarian drilling, and they found that the time to pregnancy when you use letrozole is the shortest, and that was followed by, clomiphene with metformin also had a shorter time to pregnancy as compared to clomiphene citrate alone, gonadotrophins as well as laparoscopic ovarian drilling.
Thank you. And just
Yeah,
one more
so
quick question. Is
as Dr. Madhuri said, I have shown so many times that now so many evidences, latest also as she put it, letrozole is the first line of management as far as oral ovulation is concerned. Okay, we have to
So which
now.
are the situations where you would not use letrozole and you would prefer CC? When you say first line,
Serum E2 level, the serum E2 level is less because letrozole is anti-estrogenic. So if the serum E2 level is
Letrozole is not anti-estrogenic, clomiphene citrate is, no, clomiphene citrate is anti-estrogenic, letrozole is a aromatase inhibitor.
it reduces the production of the
Yeah, but therefore the endometrial receptivity is much better when you are using letrozole because it is the high estrogen levels which decrease the endometrial receptivity, and therefore even when you are using gonadotrophins, and wherein you find that in your ART cycle or in your IUI cycle when you are using gonadotrophins where you have a high E2 level, usually the endometrial receptivity is less, and therefore where you have high output cycles wherein you have a lot of follicles where you have E2 levels more than 3500, there is a chance where you can develop ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. It is best to freeze all and transfer in a subsequent frozen embryo transfer cycle. So it is the estrogen which decreases the implantation rates.
The only thing I can tell you about letrozole and clomiphene, clomiphene citrate is a little bit less expensive than as compared to letrozole, but still I think it's not also compared to gonadotropins. Gonadotropins are much.
Yes, actually now, Ranjana, there is very little difference left. So basically it is either or. And actually you can use, there is no difference in the selection now. You can use letrozole as first line for anybody. And you can use clomiphene
see,
if you choose to. If you
Clomiphene, why we
That's
should
why.
not use and why to use letrozole, you can think the other way around, because clomiphene still has a small tendency, I mean you can get multiple pregnancies because we get many times 2 or 3 follicles, multiple follicles.
There is
No, but multiple pregnancy definitely, because letrozole it's a monofollicular that is there, and even OHSs there is some small chance of getting OHSs as compared to
I think that is
letrozole.
not there.
So we should not use
Actually, the
clomiphene
only
at all.
thing that remains now for us to know is which are the patients which are going to be letrozole resistant. We don't have that subset as yet, where we do not know which ones are not going to respond to letrozole. We have the step up regime, as Dr. Kanti has told you, you keep on increasing the amount of letrozole. But then I would like to inform the House that the Drug Controller of India recommends only 2.5 milligram of letrozole for ovulation induction. So you cannot, not even 5. So when you are using, yeah, for 5 days. That is the recommendation. So if you have to go by the drug controller, you cannot use these regimes for our patients as such.
regarding the insulin resistance, what we clinically find that postprandial insulin is more important than a fasting insulin, because majority of the patients, they get more fasting serum insulin is normal, but the postprandial serum insulin is higher.
If you
So we
want to
should
do it
have-
like that, Pramila,
Yes,
you can, but it is not recommended to do it. That's what I was trying to convey, that none of the guidelines are
And
indicating.
we'll be able to diagnose the pre-diabetic state, and we can counsel the patient.
In any case, you are going to do
Pre-diabetic
an
is diagnosed only
OGTT.
by a GTT, okay?
GTT.
There is no role
Otherwise,
of
no.
doing insulin
Insulin,
levels, whether
nothing,
fasting
nothing.
or postprandial, and that is period.
Yeah. At the moment, nothing, only OGTT.
OGTT will become
Some
abnormal
of us
later on.
are used to doing HbA1c also to know the status, but
That
that is also not recommended.
Yes, that is
But
only
Sonia,
to know the
actually
diabetic.
yesterday it was discussed a lot in great detail that what is the role of postprandial insulin.
Yeah.
Because they say OGTT may be normal because she is not diabetic yet. But if she is prone to diabetes or she is only in the stage of becoming diabetic later, but PP insulin is the best guide. It was discussed by the endocrinologist multiple times yesterday.
No, but insulin levels, I mean, they are not same. They don't have the same sensitivity, and the insulin assays are not reliable, and therefore insulin levels should not be done, and that is the evidence which
That
is
is-
there
and
all
that
over the
is-
world.
today
Nobody
that is
today
the
does
evidence.
insulin levels.
Today
It's
that is
only
the
the GTT, wherein you can do a 75 grams, where you do 1 hour, 2 hour, and 3 hour, and not do a single test which you
Yeah,
do in
yeah.
pregnancy, that is 75 grams and then 1.5 hours OGT. That is the OGT. You have to do a complete GTT. There is no role for doing any insulin
Insulin.
levels whatsoever.
Insulin.
And hemoglobin A1C should be done only for those patients who are diabetic. And for their follow-up. And it is not diagnostic of anything.
So basically today that is the recommendation, Ranjana. Guidelines keep changing. Tomorrow we may have evidence for what you are saying, but today there is no evidence, no evidence.
Dr. Patil, as you said, it is a inflammatory process, polycystic and metabolic. Besides lifestyle
Dr.
changes,
Pramila, we'll have to close here, please.
besides lifestyle changes and metformin, are there any things else we can give to the patient to reduce this inflammatory process?
In metformin again does not reduce the inflammatory
Lifestyle
process.
changes.
It's only the lifestyle which
Reducing visceral fat and all.
Yes.
Omega-3 fatty
Actually,
acids are supposed to reduce
these
it.
days we also
ROS
advocate
levels.
giving antioxidants because
Yes.
we think that
There are
PCOS is
papers.
a immunomodulatory process is going on. So we give antioxidants.
Thank
No,
you
and
so
one
much.
more thing I want to, this one more thing which I want to take is Dr. Kanti said that myoinositol has evidence. No, myoinositol today does not have evidence. All the studies, which have been published have very small number of patients in them. So unless you do a large, and none of them are RCTs. So it's just a grade C evidence, and it is a very, very low quality evidence. So unless we have large number of populations as controls as well as in the experimental group, and they are RCTs, we cannot say that inositols have evidence. Probably they are
But we
molecules
cannot-
which help in decreasing the insulin resistance, but we cannot say that it has evidence. It's still, the evidence needs to come.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry to be sounding like a policeman, but we have to keep to the time.
so
Thank you
sum it
to all
up.
the chairpersons and speakers.
1 minute, let him summarize.
To sum it up, thank you, Dr. Madhuri, Dr. Sonia Malik, Dr. Kanti, for a wonderful discussion. And I think the audience is having more knowledge about the current status of PCOS, the low dose, the low inflammatory process, the insulin resistance, what is the current status of letrozole, and what is the current status of insulin resistance. I think, thank you very much for a wonderful discussion.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, sir,
Thank you,
for such an interactive session.